articulation or lockers. We want to find out which one gives you the best bang for your buck if you can only pick one, or at least if you have to pick one first. So today we're in the shop, we're gonna use these ramps. I built 2 of them. We're gonna flex out the truck and we're gonna see which one can get further. If you don't know, we tried this video before in the past out on the trail and we failed miserably. There was weather, there was rocks, there was all sorts of stuff that went wrong. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out here. But let's just get into it. I'm going to show you this truck. So if you've been on the channel for a while, you will recognize this truck. It is Brian's truck. He has graciously lent it to us so that we can do this test. And so yeah, this thing has mid-travel in the front with Bilstein 8112s, and in the back it has a JD Fab shock relocation, which gives you way more flex than you normally would get. So what we've done is we've added a limit strap to limit the travel to what a stock truck would get if you bolted in a mid-travel setup. So we can just take the strap out, run it full articulation with the shock relo, and then we can put the straps in and run it just like how a stock truck would be. Obviously it has front and rear lockers, so that's why we're using this truck to test. Everything's gonna be the exact same other than just the rear suspension being limited. So the goal with articulation is to keep all 4 wheels on the ground at all times to give you the best traction and stability, even in super twisty situations. We have a limit strap on one side and not on the other. This is showing you the difference between what the shock relocation can do versus the stock suspension. You get 5 inches more droop with the shock relocation, which is it's gonna make a pretty big difference, as you're gonna see in this video. The way a differential works is it allows your tires to spin at different speeds. The reason that's important on the street is as you go around a corner, the outside tire has to travel further, which means it has to spin faster. So a differential works by letting the tires spin at different speeds so that you never get crazy chirping or lose control or anything like that. So what a locker does is in the diff, it will lock up, engage, and then both wheels will spin equally and get equal amounts of power. So even if one is off the ground and just free floating doing nothing, the other one can still drive you forward, which obviously is important when you're in a twisty situation. So we're gonna test out exactly how much better or worse that is than articulation. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's time to test. So we're testing articulation versus lockers using these 2 ramps. The reason we use 2 ramps is as the vehicle articulates like this, it's testing the entire vehicle as a whole, as opposed to just one aspect, the rear or the front. If we just did the front, you would get one number, and then if you turned around and backed up, you would get a different number. This is gonna be consistent every time, and it's gonna test the vehicle as a whole. So that's what we're aiming for here, which is why we're doing it this way. So first up, we're gonna test out how far we can get with just limited travel, no lockers, to set ourselves a baseline. Then we're gonna go into doing lockers, and then we're gonna take off the limit strap, test articulation, and then finally we're gonna do it with all of them and see how far we can get with that. So yeah, let's get this baseline done. Okay, stock flex, in 4-wheel drive this time. All right, so that's as far as we can get with stock travel, and it's pretty mediocre, honestly. So in the back, we are up, where's the main contact patch? Right there. 10.5 inches in the back. In the front, we're about 11.5 inches. So not that great. So this is basically what you can expect from a stock truck. It's giving us a baseline. And up here we got a foot of space between the tire and the fender. So we can use that as a reference, as well as where we got to on the ramps themselves. And in the front, we got 9 inches of space between the tire and the fender. Totally irrelevant number. We're just using it as a reference to see how much more droop we can get with lockers. So we just tested lockers with stock articulation. And basically kind of what I figured would happened. We can max out this rear ramp. It's as tall as I can make it while still fitting under the truck, but the wheels are off the ground. This thing is super tippy. Like, I can just pick the whole truck up. So it's not, I would not call it stable by any means. It is gonna be pretty sketchy if you're actually wheeling. Of course, you could keep powering through and make it over something that was hanging you up otherwise, but it's not gonna feel good. The truck feels tippy and sketchy. It went as far as, like it goes as far as you want, but I stopped it here. So I stopped it at 14 inches in the back. Our front measurement to the fender is now just over 9 3/8 there. We made it all the way up to 16 inches in the front here. It's pretty good. You can see it's way more stuffed into the wheel well here. It's basically touching. And here we have 13 inches in the back, which is the maximum amount of droop that a stock truck would allow. Of course, you lose traction before you actually lose all your droop. So we have about a 1 inch there. So you can just rock the truck, and it doesn't feel super good when you're inside, honestly. It will get you over a situation, but you won't feel super good doing it. All right, so let's make some notes here.
Whoa!
All right, so we just did full articulation with no lockers, and we got up to 14 inches, which is the same place we stopped with the lockers. I think this could probably make it a little tiny bit further, but the ramps were starting to get a little sketchy, so 14 inches there, which is pretty good. In the front, we have our normal 9 inches of fender clearance. Front right, we made it up to 16 inches again, which is the same as the lockers. So in the back, we have 16.5 inches from the tire to the fender, which is a huge improvement over how it was with stock travel. But look at this, compared to the lockers, the truck is totally stable. Whereas the lockers, the truck was flipping all over the place. In this case, the truck is completely stable. So that's really sweet. So the reason that it is starting to get a little sketchy on the ramps there is because as your axle flexes out like this, it actually wants to rotate that way just a little bit. We call that rear steer. Obviously you want to try and limit it as much as possible, but it just happens. It's just the way that geometry works. But what happens is this wheel is starting to point in like that a little bit, and it wants to kick the ramp over. So that's why we had to stop. It could have probably gone a little bit further, but this is max travel anyway, so we would be right at the limit right there anyways. So we're gonna try lockers and full articulation and see what happens, but the reality is we're just gonna be able to drive right over the top of the ramps. Maybe we will. All right, so lockers and flex. Let's see what we can do here. So, oh man, okay. We can get right to the tippy top here. But man, it feels way more in control. With lockers and articulation, we were able to drive way higher on the ramp and it didn't get sketchy at all. And that's just a perfect example of the kind of control that lockers give you, because you don't have any wheel slippage. So you know exactly what's gonna happen and things just go smoothly, which is amazing when you're off-road, and it's really nice on these ramps. So let's give these a quick measure. All right, so this time we made it up, center of contact patch. We're way up at 15.5 inches, which is a lot more than we got before without the lockers on. Obviously we're getting to the top of the ramp there, but we should be still at our 9 inches. Yeah, so 9 inches there. That's just the max travel that you can get with that thing. Here in the front, we are now up center. We gained like another ½ inch in the front, looks like 16.5-ish, somewhere around there. In the back, now we are up to 17 inches. And it still feels well planted. I call that a pretty big win. So obviously, if you want the best performance, you gotta have both. But yeah, let's talk about what happened. All right, so we went through all the tests. We went from stock travel to stock travel with lockers, flex with no lockers, lockers and flex. We did it all. Kind of what we thought, but also a little bit different. It is interesting. So basically, as soon as we put the lockers on with stock flex, we were basically instantly lifting wheels. Like, yeah, we could go further for sure, but we were like starting to three wheel. It started to get really tippy and sketchy. You were starting to lose control a little bit. For sure, if you're on an obstacle, you could get up that obstacle like that, unless it would like really want to tip you over and you just flipped. Like if you're going up something steep instead of just on flat ground, could definitely get dicey. It was not ideal for that, but it would get you over a situation where the flex was just not quite enough. On the other hand, the flex itself, it made it to the same point that the lockers did while having wheels in the air. Without lifting a wheel, the truck felt totally planted the whole time, felt totally solid. So that's a really interesting thing to take away, is like, where do you want your control to be? Obviously, once we put the articulation and the lockers, we had so much control. We could get right to the top and feel completely comfortable there. Whereas before, it was always tippy or it wanted to come off the ramps. Obviously, we're not using ramps when we're out on the trails, but same kind of idea. Like, you don't want to be out of control. So the more control you have, the better you're going to be at wheeling. In the end, I think it really depends on what you're looking for, because they have different benefits and they have different strengths and weaknesses. Plus, they have things outside of just an articulation test that makes them better. For instance, doing rear flex is going to give you better performing suspension just in general as you're driving around, which is awesome. And then lockers, they're going to give you more control as you drive over an obstacle, even if all your wheels are on the ground. So I'm having a hard time saying which one I think is more worth it. I think realistically, lockers will get you out of more situations. If you find yourself stuck, you're way more likely to be able to get out of that situation or through a quick obstacle with lockers than with just flex alone. I think if I had to choose one, I'd probably go with lockers for just straight up capability, because it will get you through those situations even if you are tippy. However, it won't get you over some very extreme obstacles just because it will be too tippy and you'll flip over. So it does have its limits, but I think if you had to pick one, I would probably go with lockers, at least first, and upgrade my suspension later. But I do love whooping and I love great suspension, so it is a tough call, but lockers are definitely gonna be a game changer if you don't have suspension already. So let us know in the comments which one you would pick. I'm super curious to know. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe. If you don't want to, that's cool too. Just make sure you come back for our next video. Thanks so much, we'll see you later.